7. The Babe and the Dragon by P.G. Wodehouse. The annual Inter-House Football Cup at St. Austin's lay between Dackers, who were the holders, and Merivales, who had been runner-up in the previous year, and had won it altogether 3 times out of the last 5. The cup was something of a tradition in Merivales, but of late Dackers had become serious rivals, and as has been said before, were the present holders. This year there was not much to choose between the 2 teams. Dackers had 3 of the first 15, and 2 of the second Merivales, 2 of the first and 4 of the second St. Austin's being not altogether a boarding school. Many of the brightest stars of the teams were day boys, and there was of course always the chance that one of these would suddenly see the folly of his ways reform, and become a member of a house. This frequently happened, and this year it was almost certain to happen again, for no less a celebrity than MacArthur, commonly known as the Babe, had been heard to state that he was negotiating with his parents to that end. Which house he would go to was at present uncertain. He did not know himself, but it would, he said, probably be one of the 2 favorites for the cup. This lent an added interest to the competition, for the presence of the Babe would almost certainly turn the scale. The Babe's nationality was Scots, and like most Scotsmen he could play football more than a little. He was the safest, coolest centre, 3/4 the school had, or had had for some time. He shone in all branches of the game, but especially in tackling. To see the Babe spring apparently from nowhere in the middle of an inter-school match and bring down with violence a man who had passed the back was an intellectual treat. Both Dackers and Merivales therefore yearned for his advent exceedingly. The reasons which finally decided his choice were rather curious. They arose in the following manner. The Babe's sister was at Girton. A certain Miss Florence Beasley was also at Girton. When the Babe's sister revisited the ancestral home at the end of the term, she brought Miss Beasley with her to spend a week. What she saw in Miss Beasley was to the Babe a matter for wonder, but she must have liked her, or she would not have gone out of her way to seek her company. Be that as it may, the Babe would have gone a very long way out of his way to avoid her company. He led a fine, healthy outofter's life during that week, and doubtless did himself a lot of good. But times will occur when it is imperative that a man shall be under the family roof. Mealtimes, for instance, the Babe could not subsist without food, and he was obliged Miss Beasley, or no Miss Beasley, to present himself on these occasions. This, by the way, was in the Easter holidays, so that there was no school to give him an excuse for absence. Breakfast was a nightmare, lunch was rather worse, and as for dinner, it was quite unspeakable. Miss Beasley seemed to gather force during the day. It was not the actual presence of the lady that revolted the Babe, for that was passable enough. It was her conversation that killed. She refused to let the Babe alone. She was intensely learned herself, and seemed to take a morbid delight in dissecting his ignorance and showing everybody the pieces. Also, she persisted in calling him Mr. MacArthur in a way that seemed somehow to point out and emphasize his youthfulness. She added it to her remarks as a sort of afterthought or eck. "Do you read Browning, Mr. MacArthur?" she would say suddenly, having apparently waited carefully until she saw that his mouth was full. The Babe would swallow, convulsively choke, blush, and finally say, "No, not much." This in a tone of pity, not untinged with scorn. "When you say not much, Mr. MacArthur, what exactly do you mean? Have you read any of his poems?" "Oh yes, 1 or 2. Have you read Pippa Passes?" "No, I think not." "Surely you must know Mr. MacArthur, whether you have or not. Have you read Fiffin at the Fair?" "No." "Have you read Sordello?" "No." "What have you read, Mr. MacArthur?" Brought to bay in this fashion, he would have to admit that he had read the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and not a syllable more, and Miss Beasley would look at him for a moment and sigh softly. The Babe's subsequent share in the conversation, provided the dragon made no further onslaught, was not large. One never-to-be-forgotten day, shortly before the end of her visit, a series of horrible accidents resulted in their being left to lunch together, alone. The Babe had received no previous warning, and when he was suddenly confronted with this terrible state of affairs, he almost swooned. The lady's steady and critical inspection of his style of carving a chicken completed his downfall. His previous experience of carving had been limited to those entertainments, which went by the name of study gorges, where if you wanted to help a chicken, you took hold of one leg, invited an accomplice to attach himself to the other, and pulled. But though unskillful, he was plucky and energetic. He lofted the bird out of the dish on to the tablecloth twice in the first minute, stifling a mad inclination to call out 4 or something to that effect, He laughed a hollow, mirthless laugh, and replaced the errant fowl. When a third attack ended in the same way, Miss Beasley asked permission to try what she could do. She tried, and in 2 minutes the chicken was neatly dismembered. The babe reseated himself in an overwrought state. "Tell me about St. Austin's, Mr. MacArthur," said Miss Beasley, as the babe was trying to think of something to say. "Not about the weather. Do you play football?" "Yes." A prolonged silence. "Do you?" began the babe at last. "Tell me," began Miss Beasley simultaneously. "I beg your pardon," said the babe. "You were saying—" "Not at all, Mr. MacArthur, you were saying—" "I was only going to ask you if you played crook." "Yes, do you?" "No." If this is going to continue," thought the babe, "I shall be reluctantly compelled to commit suicide." There was another long pause. "Tell me the names of some of the masters at St. Austin's, Mr. MacArthur," said Miss Beasley. She habitually spoke as if she were an examination paper, and her manner might have seemed to some to verge upon the autocratic. But the babe was too thankful that the question was not on Browning or the higher algebra to notice this. He reeled off a list of names. "Then there's Merivale, rather a decent sort, and Dacre." "What sort of a man is Mr. Dacre?" "Rather a rotter, I think." "What is a rotter, Mr. MacArthur?" "Well, I don't know how to describe it exactly. He doesn't play cricket or anything. He's generally considered rather a crock." "Really, this is very interesting, Mr. MacArthur. And what is a crock? I suppose what it comes to," she added, as the babe did his best to find a definition, "is this, that you yourself dislike him." The babe admitted the impeachment. Mr. Dacre had a finished gift of sarcasm, which had made him writhe on several occasions, and sarcastic masters are rarely very popular. "Ah," said Miss Beasley. She made frequent use of that monosyllable. It generally gave the babe the same sort of feeling as he had been accustomed to experience in the happy days of his childhood, when he had been caught stealing jam. Miss Beasley went at last, and the babe felt like a convict who has just received a free pardon. One afternoon in the following term, he was playing fives with Charteris, a prefect in Merivale's house. Charteris was remarkable from the fact that he edited and published at his own expense an unofficial and highly personal paper called The Glow Worm, which was a great deal more in demand than the recognized school magazine The Austinian, and always paid its expenses handsomely. Charteris had the journalistic taint very badly. He was always the first to get wind of any piece of school news. On this occasion, he was in possession of an exclusive item. The babe was the first person to whom he communicated it. "Have you heard the latest romance in high life, babe?" he observed, as they were leaving the court. "But of course you haven't. You never do hear anything." "Well?" asked the babe patiently. "You know Dacres?" "I seem to have heard the name somewhere." "He's going to be married." "Yes, don't trouble to try and look interested. You're one of those offensive people who mind their own business and nobody else's. Only I thought I'd tell you, then you'll have a remote chance of understanding my quips on the subject. In next week's Glow Worm, you laddies frae the north have to be carefully prepared for the subtler flights of wit." "Thanks," said the babe placidly. "Good night." The headmaster intercepted the babe a few days after he was going home after a scratch game of football. "MacArthur," said he, "you pass Mr. Dacre's house, do you not, on your way home, then? Would you mind asking him for me to take preparation tonight? I find I shall be unable to be there." It was the custom at St. Austin's for the head to preside at preparation once a week, but he performed this duty like the celebrated Irishman as often as he could avoid it. The babe accepted the commission. He was shown into the drawing-room to his consternation, for he was not a society man. There appeared to be a species of tea-party going on. As the door opened, somebody was just finishing a remark. "Faculty which he displayed in such poems as Sordello," said the voice. The babe knew that voice. He would have fled if he had been able, but the servant was already announcing him. Mr. Dacre began to do the honors. "Mr. MacArthur and I have met before," said Miss Beasley, for it was she. "Curiously enough, the subject which we have just been discussing is one in which he takes, I think, a great interest. I was saying, Mr. MacArthur, when you came in, that few of Tennyson's works show the poetic faculty which Browning displays in Sordello." The babe looked helplessly at Mr. Dacre. "I think you are taking MacArthur out of his depth there," said Mr. Dacre. "Was there something you wanted to see me about, MacArthur?" The babe delivered his message. "Oh yes, certainly," said Mr. Dacre. "Shall you be passing the schoolhouse tonight? if so you might give the headmaster my compliments, and say I shall be delighted. The babe had had no intention of going out of his way to that extent, but the chance of escape offered by the suggestion was too good to be missed. He went. On his way he called at Merivale's and asked to see Charteris. "Look here, Charteris," he said, "you remember telling me that Dacre was going to be married?" "Yes." "Well, do you know her name by any chance?" "I cannot wheel ma bra Helander, she is a Miss Beasley." "Great Scott," said the babe. "Hullo, why was your young heart set in that direction? You amaze and pain me, babe. I think we'd better have a story on the subject in the Glow-Worm, with you as hero and Dacre as villain. It shall end happily, of course. I'll write it myself." "You'd better," said the babe grimly. "Oh, I say, Charteris. Well, when I come as a boarder, I shall be a house prefect, shan't I, as I am in the 6th? "Yes. And prefects have to go to breakfast and supper, and that sort of thing pretty often with the housebeak, don't they? Such are the facts of the case. Thanks, that's all. Go away, and do some work. Good night." The cup went to Merivale's. That year, the babe played a singularly brilliant game for them.